When talking about our favorite games and consoles, it's easy to say, I love this controller, or the memory card was a necessity, but a little while ago we sat here and talked about some of the weird video game accessories, the stuff that makes you think like, who in the hell would need a Resident Evil 4 chainsaw for the PS2 or the GameCube? I mean, collectors, hey, that's awesome for them, right?
That's who. The same people that need the stupid bowling ball.
I think we answered the question so we can end the episode. Now, no, but people, we are not done. As a matter of fact, we are here on A Cast of the Past with a brand new episode available every single Sunday celebrating the past. In this case, we're going to be celebrating 15 weird and occasionally awesome video game accessories we cannot believe existed. I mean, I can't say for certain whether Keith from London, Ontario, or Juan from Puerto Rico, I don't know if we can't believe they existed yet, but this article from throwbacks.com published by Matt stated that, so we're going to be reacting to that. So Keith, are you ready to go down memory lane and celebrating some maybe not great stuff?
I cannot wait. This is my favorite stuff. Like it's really easy to talk about how great the Rock Band accessory kits are, or how much I love Guitar Hero, or how great of a device the Wii Fit balance board is. But let's talk about the dumb stuff. I want to let's see what you got, Matt. I don't want to believe it exists either.
Matt, let's see how right or wrong you were about 15 weird stuff. And for everybody watching and listening, please be part of the conversation over at acastofthepast.com/discord. Let us know, out of these 15, which ones you would actually like to check out, or you actually experienced them as a kid. So scrolling down a little bit, one of the top ones, and I think this is one of the most legendary ones, and I think a lot of people don't even know that it's not just a Smash character.
Yeah,
it's Rob the Robot.
I was gonna say, I imagine most of Rob's fame comes from him being in Super Smash Brothers. Like, the fact that he was a weird, obscure NES accessory is secondary to the fact that he's in Smash at this point.
Exactly, and there's a little bit of information from this throwbacks.com article, and they state that the whole purpose of Rob was so it was going to be more family friendly. I think a lot of us watch our short circuits, our movies with robots brought to life, and Rob was kind of be that concept for the NES.
That's the movie I watched with robots.
I mean, I don't think that would be too kid friendly, right?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a Rob the Robot in action, like that wasn't just on a shelf somewhere that costs $300. I'd like to see that someday.
And practically here, they point out he scans infrared signals with his eyes and uses a disc to press a button on a controller, but it seems to have only worked with 2 games. So I think it's one of those things that from a collector standpoint, it's cool to have, but functionally it was so limited, right?
Yeah. What games does Rob work with? I didn't realize that it was only a select thing.
Yeah, it's 2 of them only. So if you could actually look that up while I give people an overview. I
gave myself work there.
Yeah, you got to work to be on this podcast, Keith. It's not just about your sexy reactions, man. Meanwhile, article or item number 2. Now this one, the concept is interesting. We have the Aura Interactors. Keith, when you think about the Aura Interactor, what do you think that is? Just by name.
I don't have the slightest clue. It is you interact with something, and it
the aura.
You interact with the aura, and it becomes I have no idea. That is the most generic name I've ever heard. You might as well call it like the Fight Master Plus. But even with the Fight Master Plus, you know what it does. It makes you a Fight Master Plus.
Exactly.
I don't know what this does.
So for those that have never seen this in action, it's essentially a backpack with a vibrator in the back because...
Well, hold on.
Okay. People, wait. We got to clarify some information here. Not that kind, Keith. What are you thinking about?
I imagine it's a backpack that vibrates is what you meant to say.
Yes, I mean, it vibrates, so it's a vibrator, man. It vibrates, but...
No, a backpack with a vibrator is a very different thing. We need to get off this topic.
Is that the family-friendly version? Fine. So yes. This worked with the Super Nintendo or the Sega Genesis, and it basically allowed to have some sort of impact while getting hit in games. But apparently it broke very easily. And holy crap, what would you pay for this? Like, if you said, Keith, you wanted to have some vibration in your life, how much would you be willing if you wanted your video games to vibrate?
Okay.
For the Super Nintendo or the Genesis, how much would you be willing to pay for this? A backpack that vibrates.
You see, I would probably
back in the day,
put like $40 down on this, but the fact that it was for the Super Nintendo and from that era where everything was just way too expensive, I imagine this thing cost like $150.
$180.
Oh
Screw that. Screw that. This has to be like, in theory, it's badass, right? Because you have this thing in the back and you feel the action.
Like, oh wow, I got punched in Street Fighter. It buzzed my back a little bit. Oh no. So what happens like when E Honda goes to town on you and does his like 100-hand slap? Does the thing just like light on fire then, or?
I don't know, man. I ain't gonna go there. Now, this next one, I had actually seen an article about. Have you ever heard about the Sega Activator? These names are awesome, by the way.
This is a real good name. I've heard the words Sega Activator before. I don't know what it actually is.
So we can actually show this on video, by the way. People don't be afraid of this for those that are speculating on the audio one. But this is actually for the Sega Genesis, and it's kind of interesting because in modern times you would associate this with VR or even Kinect. What it did was that it had infrareds. So imagine an octagon on the floor, and it had infrareds throughout it. So if you moved your hand, it would detect, oh, if you move your hand this way, this is extra Y input, right? This button. So the idea is like you can move and the game is playing, but in practice, it's not really practical because games weren't designed to be this. It's cool, but aside from a couple of times, it doesn't replace the experience of a D-pad and buttons, right?
This is one of those weird accessories where I want to see it in action. Like I want to see a video on YouTube of a kid in the octagon going like almost like playing a one-player game of Twister. Like if I want to hit jump and A and altered beast, I need to put my left foot left and my right foot right, and then put my arm out in the middle, and then land flat on my face, and just actually see it in action, because that must have been a sight to behold.
That's literally what we're doing right now.
Okay,
so to give Keith a specific idea, shout out to River City Gamers on YouTube, and that's what we're taking a look at right now. So he's playing Golden Axe right now, and to move forward, describe what you're seeing, Keith, in order to just play Golden Axe.
It looks like he's playing a one-person version of the Hokey Pokey. Like if you want to hit your sword, you put your left foot in, then your left foot out, and then if you want to jump, you shake it all about.
Yeah, this is maybe cool in theory, and I mean, hey, like VR is technically the next step in this, right? So maybe they just didn't understand
the next step. Which foot are you doing? What button are you going to press when you take?
I'm just going to shake it all about.
Yeah.
Speaking of, now we're gonna rock and roll on the NES, Keith. When you think about the rock and roller, what do you think that is?
Again, just these names are just
they give you nothing. You're like, man, I got nothing.
No idea what the rock and roller. I want to say like music instrument, but were there any music games
Keith,
on the NES?
I'm gonna read the subtitle. Let me know if that clears it up. So the rock and roller is the radical action controller for all your Nintendo games. Does that help? Okay.
No. It doesn't. Okay. What about this controller makes it radical?
So I'm going to read this word for word from the article. Supposedly, letting your body replace the D-pad for moving in NES games, the rock and roller was ultimately pointless for two reasons. Number one, you still had to hold the controller to actually press the buttons. And two, it didn't work properly at all. So I would just... Can you imagine playing like any game that required the constant moving of the D-pad or something like that?
It's kind of like if there was like a nightmare version of the Tony Hawk Ride controller, it seems like this is it.
And what's funny is you mentioned that, But companies did try. I mean, you think about Tony Hawk's, like this concept of the movement is going to be bestowed upon a pad, something like this. And I just gotta give it a shout out. That pad looks like the late 80s, early 90s. Like it just screams.
Really, if you're listening to the audio version of this, go Google a picture of that pad, and it's the most 80s radical action controller you can possibly think of. I'm starting to sense a theme with this though, and I'm really curious just why there was this obsession since the NES times of making somebody the controller. Why do you need a pad? Why do you need an octagon?
You feel the power. That's it.
Or you can pick up a controller and play it like a normal person. You don't need the rockin' radical to and fro.
By the way, did you ever figure out the 2 games to work with Rob?
Yes, I did.
Okay, got it.
Gyromite and Stack Up. I have played neither of those games.
And that is exactly why it failed. But, hey, he's playable in Smash. Now, I think we had touched upon this one a little bit before, but for the context of this article, we'll bring it back up again. It's the Donkey Konga drums for Donkey Konga on the GameCube, which, even though it's like a weird controller, the fact that visually it looks like something out of Donkey it's 2 freaking barrels, right? I mean we're not talking much here.
It's Donkey Konga. It is a pair of Congo drums. It's the perfect device for that game. This one is maybe the most obnoxious accessory I've ever gone because
and loud.
Like imagine you're going over to your friend's house, or even you get your parents to go pick up this Donkey Konga game and controllers, and then while you play the game, this is all you hear.
Don't forget, you gotta clap. You gotta clap every now and then too. So.
And it's just 8 hours of that.
I just gotta say, sorry. Keith, that was beautiful, man.
I know. I made great Donkey Konga music.
No, I was gonna go somewhere and I chose not to. So moving on to accessory number 6. Had you ever heard about the game Steel Battalion?
Yes.
Okay.
I know what
you know where we're going.
I love this thing. This is my jam.
Before I even bring it up, it's like, was this something? Because this is how I identify it. I regret not owning this because it probably sucked, but damn it, this looked freaking badass as a kid, right?
This is one of the accessories. Like another common theme of these things is that they kind of work. We kind of get there. There's an idea, but it just doesn't pull it off. This Steel Battalion controller, the game or the one that came out specifically for this game, so it feels like you're piloting a mech. I wish so badly that this actually worked the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, and reading this word for word from the article, this massive 40-button controller was included with the mech simulator game Steel Battalion and cost as much as the system it was played on. Maybe one of the reasons why not a lot of people got it, right?
But God, it's so cool.
It's so badass, right? Between the buttons, 2 sticks, and foot pedals, the game went really the extra distance to make you feel like you were actually driving a giant walking tank. Impractical, but totally awesome. I mean, we got to reiterate, a 40-button controller, but I think now where the people are obsessed with like truck driving simulators and all this stuff, like, dude, this was just way ahead of its time, right?
Yeah, I think there's room for this to be a real thing these days, especially there are people in VR that are simulating and recreating the entire cockpit of an airplane. Like Steel Battalion controller, you were too soon, but your time has come. So please be a thing.
Yeah, we're getting to an interesting... So aside from kind of breezing through this list, some of the stuff I had actually never seen before, and this next one is very interesting. It's called the Frag Master. We're going back to like the lingo with Quake and Doom and all of this stuff. So just because the name doesn't really say a whole lot, this is a gaming steering wheel company decided to get on making controller for first-person shooters, and the result was this toilet seat-looking monstrosity. Can you? I would love. Try to describe this a little bit, Keith.
Have you ever seen a kettlebell?
Yeah.
It kind of looks like if you flattened a kettlebell, and it
looks like a ship from Stargate or something.
Kind of, yeah. I'm looking at it and I'm trying to wrap my head around how this makes you a frag master by using this.
I do love the concept that a lot of people will say mouse and keyboard is better. So, hey, you know what we should do, Keith? A button-based controller for PC. Now, I think it's easy to forget that before mouse and keyboard became a regular thing, a lot of people, myself included, like I played Doom with like this weird, I don't even know how to describe a controller, because it's like, oh, why would you use a keyboard to play video games, right? And now it's like perfectly acceptable.
Remember, you don't really see them anymore, but do you remember when mouses used to have those giant wheels? Like you couldn't just scroll a mouse, but it was just like a giant turd on a desk, and then it was
you
just
wouldn't
a
move it. You
rolling
wouldn't
ball.
move it, yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't move it. You just move this ball. Like I know people that have played like full first-person shooters with that thing, and it's insane to me.
And this is pretty old. So the article points out it works with Windows 95 and 98 games. So this is a couple years old.
It seems like from that era.
And just to reiterate, because every article has got to point this out, the Resident Evil 4 chainsaw controller for GameCube and PS2, we had actually reacted to this. Does your opinion on it, or love or hate for it, change?
Yes and no, because I still think it's beautiful, but yet I still think it's a monstrosity.
You know what I would love? Is for you eventually to play a game from start to finish with that.
If you get me one of those and I don't have to pay the exuberant amount of money it probably costs,
somebody
I will happily take
somebody
you
send
up on
one
that
to
offer.
Keith. He'll send it back. We'll make him send it back. Somebody send one to Keith.
Know what? I would be happy to do that. I would even cover the shipping to make that happen. Just to do
come
it.
on, make this happen. Keith has Brickhouse Hamilton on Twitch. Think of the entertainment.
Let me live stream playing with a chainsaw. You know
now
what
this
I mean.
Next one, let's split it into multiple parts. First, the visual part, and then the functional one. So we're talking about the Namco negkhan. That name is very odd for the PS1. So give me your first impressions just based on the visual presentation, and I'll explain it for those audio listeners as well.
It looks like a controller that's ahead of its time, because you have your buttons, you have your D-pad, and then it looks like something that looks like an interact machine in the middle of it that you can swipe your debit card through to pay for a microtransaction.
Looks like something that would belong in an airplane, right? You just grab this, you want to play a game, slide the credit card.
Yeah, exactly, and then boom, you're good to go.
Yeah, so for those on the audio version, it's a pretty modern looking controller, very simplistic, very not PS1. So it's not that PS1 gray controller color. It's like an off-white with blue and red buttons. It's got a start button on the left, not a select, and it's got some very beefy shoulder pads. Talk to me about those shoulder pads, Keith.
Yeah, good lord. Those
shoulder
are like
buttons.
A football player's shoulder pads on that thing.
Now, what have I told you, Keith? That this was an interesting one. That's what the article says, by the way. That's actually what it says.
Thanks, Matt.
Designed with Namco's Ridge Racer series in mind, you actually twisted the controller forward and backward to steer your car. Unfortunately, the controller was made out of super flimsy material and was prone to breaking, so you would actually move the controller.
Oh, so it's like a Rubik's Cube style thing where you twist it back and forth? But then how do you... Wait, but if the D-pad is on there, how are you supposed to steer it going fast when you're at the angle?
Don't apply too much logic. Don't apply...
But I want to know what the Interact controller was good with.
In theory, it's a neat idea, right? Like, oh, you can move the controller, but then why?
I thought it was almost like an early idea of the 6-axis, where you tilt it forward to go faster and then like tilt it upwards to go backwards. But no, they took the absolute wrong direction on that one.
And the thing is, it has less buttons than a regular PS1 controller, so it really just became a Namco thing. Maybe you could use this with like I would love. Can you imagine playing Pac-Man with this? You gotta twist the controller to go up and down or something like that.
But there's a D-pad, and Pac-Man only goes one speed.
Keith, so I know you got a lot of questions. This sucked. Okay, it was bad, Keith. Yell at Namco, not at everybody else. Okay, can we agree on that?
Okay, I agree.
Now, we got to talk about the video game accessory, which is the Power Glove, and I'm pretty sure we did touch a little bit on the Power Glove, but
yes,
I think instead of talking about the functionality, what did you think of the whole concept that from the build quality, that it just, you look at the ads and how it looked, and it's still awesome because it just looks retro. It looks like a futuristic thing that's totally not futuristic at all.
Oh, absolutely. The Power Glove is like a gold star example of the difference that marketing could make, because really on its face value, the Power Glove isn't that much different than that stupid board that I forgot the name of that we talked about like 15 minutes ago. Just the whole concept of making your body the controller. It's just your hand instead of you tilting.
We're not done with that stuff.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that. But the fact that it turned it into this marketing genius of, you are the controller, this is the next generation of video games, and then the way that it kind of moved your imagination, that's what made the Power Glove as cool as it was. It was 100% a marketing trick, and I, to this day, still fall for it and revere the Power Glove, even though I know it's not even in like the realm of usable in the slightest.
It's one of those video game accessories that I wouldn't even just mind getting one broken, just because visually you can showcase that on a shelf or something.
Go back to that ad there for a second. If you look in the bottom corner there, are they playing Punch-Out on that? That seems
does look like
a nightmare. just like the twitch reflexes that you need to do in Punch-Out to be able to do it with an unresponsive Power Glove. Like, I get that the idea that they were going for, and this kind of, it's a great example of the marketing versus reality of the Power Glove. You see that in an ad, you're like, yes, I'm going to play Punch-Out with my fists, I have the Power Glove. But in reality, it just barely works.
Now, we are going to stick with the NES, and we said we are not done with your body as a controller. Talk to me about the Power Pad, another device supposedly to make your body as a controller. The Power Pad was ultimately only useful for a few games. Even then, you were better off just using the controller. Can we just talk about, like, who thought the design of just this twister-looking red and blue buttons?
This was DDR horrible. Before DDR was DDR.
Right?
It just didn't have the functionality to it to make it work.
I'm just looking at the cover. Nintendo was obsessed with like this whole space world, right? Like with the background and all that.
Well, it's the future. That's what the future looked like.
The little kid in the back, he's like, hey, this one won't let me play.
What is that kid doing? The kid in the yellow, he's like,
his arm is like gone.
I want the Power Pad.
Keith, I'm just gonna, this is the actual name of the next device. Are you ready?
Oh, I don't think I am, but
so,
go.
I'm just gonna say the name. You let me know what you think of that, okay? The Res Trans Vibrator.
Oh, I love the Res. I know what the Res Trans Vibrator is. It's an awesome controller built for the experience called Res for the PS2.
Oh,
I love Res.
I didn't. Hey. According to the article, this vibrator is waterproof. It's got a waterproof cover. And I'm just going to say that cover, everything about this is just weird. Did you actually use this?
No, I didn't. And it's like, it deserves to be mistaken as a weird sex thing. But it just, you know, they wanted to add that extra dimension to Res, which really didn't need that extra dimension. Can you talk to us
about what Res is as a game?
Res is Res is a hard one to describe.
Like, we're talking about vibrators, so.
Yeah, that's true. It's the vibrator game. Like, imagine if Amplitude wasn't a music game and it was just an experience. That's kind of what Res is. I'm not doing it justice. Go to YouTube. it's Res is a game that's really hard to describe. It's like, imagine if Tetris Effect didn't have the Tetris in it. And that's kind of what Res is. Yeah, it just had the effect.
So stupid. This is why people tune into the podcast, Keith.
Damn I don't think this one is why they tune into the podcast. But hey, thanks for listening.
Exactly. But now moving on to number 13. Yeah. I do think this is in the weird category, but functionally it's pretty damn cool. It's the Sega fishing controller for the Dreamcast. This is for Sega bass fishing or bass.
Sega bass fishing. You're searching the underground bass, looking for a good bass player, and that's why you need a fishing rod for it.
It's like, nah, man, this one doesn't jam quite like the other one, right?
Exactly. So put out the reel again. I had a friend that owned this thing, and I kind of love it. I have fond memories of this thing. It worked okay, but it's an idea that I always wish just kind of worked a little better, because the concept of using a fishing reel controller to go on a fishing game, like, that's kind of fun, being able to cast it and reel in the fish, but it just kind of never got there. It's like the Steel Battalion controller to me, where I think if they took another crack at it, it could be something real special.
And it looks pretty modern, because on the right side they have you call that the reel, I guess?
Yes.
So then you have that, but then some buttons. There's like a joystick in the middle. And visually, you could tell somebody, it's like, hey, this came out 2 years ago. And I think a lot of people will believe it, because it doesn't have like these excessive annoying colors. It's pretty simple and well designed.
It's kind of like the Dreamcast, even though it doesn't really go with the Dreamcast color scheme. But everything accessory-wise for the Dreamcast had that very clean, white, futuristic look, and this is no different.
And Sega Bass Fishing is actually a badass game.
Yeah, it's a great game.
Oh, man. Now we got to talk about this one. The Game Boy camera and the Game Boy printer. I think it's interesting to see. These are like super relevant now. They're going up in price, man. These are going up in price.
I have a Game Boy camera somewhere in a box in my life, and I need to know where it is.
We actually found ours.
This thing as a kid. You had one too?
Yeah, I had one, but I don't know what happened with mine. But Nicole actually was able to find hers. So we don't have the printer, but I need a Game Boy, and those are going up in price. But how interesting is it that, digital cameras didn't really become the norm till like the early 2000s, yet here we have, I mean, it's technically a digital camera, right? You could call it like that. And this is like in the 90s, man. I mean, the quality was not the best, but I don't think it was about the quality. It's like, how cool is, as a kid, you could take a picture, a really crappy one, and actually print it out.
Yeah, like the crappiest picture, to be honest. It was like 8 pixels wide, but the fact that you could do it was just so cool. And I think for a lot of people in our generation, it was our first camera. I don't know how it happened and how we got them, but the Game Boy camera, like, I know a lot of people that just like, oh yeah, I had that thing and I loved it. Not a lot of people had the printer, I don't think, because it was super expensive and the paper was even more. But the fact that you could just take these very, very low res pictures on your Game Boy, it was awesome.
Do you know some people actually use this for Zoom calls? There's I saw a video for like virtual calls. What they did is I think this is the setup. They used the Game Boy camera with like that Super Game Boy adapter on a Super Nintendo. Like, they went through all these loopholes until eventually they could plug it into a capture device, and they had.
I mean, let's be real. The internet's a weird place. If you said somebody did that, I'd be like, yeah, probably. It's the same person that used the dumb dance tilty thingy.
Because why not? And then the last item, I didn't know about this one. Did you ever hear about the Konami laser scope?
No.
So this is for the NES, and I'm kind of live reacting here because I saw it briefly.
What?
I'm just going to say it looks both awful and freaking awesome at the same time, right?
That's cool as hell.
Just describe that.
It's not a controller, it's a headset, and it looks like it has it's you are the controller once again, and it looks like it has a microphone in it. So I imagine you have to like tell it to shoot, which I think is about the point where it fell apart.
Yep, because it says this monstrosity let you tag things in games with your voice by yelling fire or anything at all, really. It wasn't sophisticated enough to tell what you were saying. It even advertised that you could use it as a headphone for your Walkman.
Ooh,
I'm just going to say...
Imagine walking down the street with that thing.
I would freaking love it. As a kid, man, I would get punched in the face like nobody's business.
Yeah.
But I would love that.
Sometimes bullying just happens. Though. Yeah. That's cool.
What game would this work with in the NES? I mean...
I imagine it would be, if it's Konami, it would be a lot of like...
I would just have to see Contra. Fire! It's got no turbo button.
Konami, it must have some sort of connection with it. But didn't Konami do? It's the shmup, the shoot 'em up. That's like World War II or World War I airplanes. It's called like 1918 or something.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, I like this is the first thing. That's the first game that I thought of when thinking about this controller. Where I kind of think it might work okay because the way that a shoot 'em up works is you're just looking at the screen and saying fire with that thing, and even if you just have to do like a constant low sound, like a to keep the action going, it might be usable there.
Apparently, it seems to be like a pretty rare. Out of curiosity, I just looked up Konami Laser Scope on eBay, and there's not one full listing. There's only one with broken parts. That's like $26 because it doesn't work. But apparently, people, if you got yourself a Konami Laser Scope, I mean, that's pretty amazing. So I want one day in my life to have Keith have the GameCube chainsaw controller while wearing the laser scope, while wearing the vibrating back, and using the Sega Activator at the same time.
I will ascend to true gamer levels at that point.
Now, if you were to say the article was 15 weird accessories, like out of these bunch of accessories, which one you're like, okay, this fits the weird label?
Yeah, if there's one that really stands out as like a we really didn't need this one, it's the backpack. And the fact, like, beyond being a stupid thing to sell to kids, what purpose does that actually fulfill? Like, oh, I got hit. Bzz, bzz, bzz. Oh, it feels like I'm in the video game.
I mean, you're describing a different type of content, though.
Yeah, just a little bit. But the fact that, like, for every other one of these, even though it didn't work in practice, there's a case to be made that it added something to the experience. What does the vibrating backpack add besides being a vibrating backpack that costs, what did you say, $180? Yep. What? That's a scam. That's what that thing is. It's the only one on this list that I look at like this was a scam for kids.
That's true. I think if I were to go with weird, it would have to be maybe the Sega Activator, because a lot of these, it's like the Donkey Kong one. I don't think it's weird. It's logical because he's got bongos in the game.
Yeah,
exactly. Like Steel Battalion, that's not weird. That's just awesome, right? So Matt, whatever your name is, I think you're wrong. But the Sega Activator, it's like nowadays you will look at this and be like, man, this would be great for like a Beat Saber if you're talking about like what this would transform into throughout the years.
That'd actually be pretty cool.
Exactly. And there was like, instead of DDR, Konami made like a music rhythm game that was with your hands in the arcade. And I would love to play that. And this is actually pretty good. But the thing is, if you didn't design something with this in mind, it just wasn't going to work. So how would you say this article from Throwbacks. Shout out once again to Matt. Would you say it's weird enough or nah?
I think we can go weirder.
Oh,
I think there's deeper depths to be had.
People, if you have recommendations for weird things that we can talk about and show on the podcast, right?
To be fair, that the Res one is like skating a very, very thin line. that is where it is.
They knew exactly what they were doing. Yeah, but people, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Remember, once again, you can join the Discord over at acastofthepast.com/Discord. Recently, we talked about cool things such as, what makes a great action RPG, hyping up the fact that we recently got that Mass Effect Legendary Edition. We talked about Dino Crisis. We got a whole lot of stuff that are not just tied to vibrators. And I think that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, I think it is pretty cool. I have it on my other screen. I have like a list of games that the laser scope works for loaded up because I was curious. And one of the top games that it worked with is Duck Hunt. And now I have this image in my head of like the duck just showing up on screen and just somebody yelling, fire, 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 fire.
It's like, man, that kid is messed up. Poor duck.
And then you miss the thing because you didn't yell fire in the closest place.
Does it just fill up the whole screen? I don't know. I don't know. But everybody, thank you so much for watching, listening. Consider dropping that 5-star review or subscribing at youtube.com/acastofthepast. And having said that, this has been another weird edition and occasionally awesome edition of A Cast
to the
Past.
Fire.
You also need to get that Game Boy camera and hold the Game Boy while holding the chainsaw.
What if I take a picture on the Game Boy camera of me with the chainsaw controller and the laser scope? I will have ascended at that point. With
people,
the
we officially have a life goal. Forget about professional development, house owning,
career or development. No, just the chainsaw.
Just that. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing, and we are also available on podcast feeds. So search the name, click on the Sword and Stone, and enjoy a brand new episode every single Sunday.